Gabriella, thank you so much for joining me. Of course, we know that the final season of Stranger Things is currently airing, and you've been one of the more popular characters on the show, one of so many people's fan favorites, including myself, playing Suzie. So, can you just talk a little bit about how did the role kind of come for you in the first place? How did you get involved in the Stranger Things universe? Did you watch the show beforehand? How did you kind of get involved with the Stranger Things universe, and how did you become to play Susie?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would like to say that ever since the show was airing, I kind of was a part of watching it and taking it all in. I had loved the show since day one, especially because all of the people who were a part of it were people that I had grown up with, especially all the kids. And getting to see them do everything with their first two seasons. I had auditioned for the third season knowing that I adored the show and I had seen how much people also loved the show. And once I was hearing about how they needed someone just for a quick scene and most of it was actually singing, I was like, this is kind of perfect. This is exactly what I had been doing at the time. Um, which was working on Broadway and singing. And it was a really short scene. It was the exact never ending story scene. Um and they didn't really give any context to what was happening in any of it or who it was between. But I was like, okay, so it's definitely something that is a little more interesting considering that the show is so, scary at times. Um, and I kind of went into it knowing nothing and it ended up working out perfectly. Because I think even Susie's a bit clueless in the entire moment. Um, and that's kind of how I heard about it all. And it was just that one scene. And from that point on, I was a part of the show and I had no idea what I was getting into, but I think that's kind of a perfect introduction to a show as wonderful and fun as this one is.
Yeah, incredible. And like I say, everyone's very excited right now for the fifth season of Stranger Things. And of course, when you were kind of in and doing the show, how did you find working with the cast? You know, I mean, the cast is seems to be magical. Everyone seems to love that particular cast. They've been doing it for so long. And so how did you find working with the cast of Stranger Things and even Gayton?
Oh, well, Gaten, I feel like, is just always so fun to be with. I've never heard anyone say that they have not been with him and not had a good time. Um, I think that especially going into the show and having just a scene with myself and him was honestly the perfect way to kind of get to know everyone. He had shown me around the entire set and had shown me uh, every place that I would possibly need to be and introduced me to everyone. And it was really exciting. I think that especially because the scene that I was first a part of was so specific, and so many people were like, "Oh, this is something we remember reading and hearing about." I think it was really exciting to get to be introduced to people as like, "Oh my gosh, you're gonna be that kid. Okay, that's exciting." And I think afterwards, it was really exciting to see that not only was I going to be coming back to all the people that I had been introduced to, but the way that I envisioned it was entirely different. If you had told me then that I would be working with people like Finn, and Charlie, like I would have been like, how? I would have thought maybe Gayton, maybe I don't know, some other people like in that exact like storyline, and the way that they had tied it together actually was so hilarious that I ended up getting to come back and see everyone, having already met them but never worked with any of them except for Gayton, which was really exciting, and I think a perfect, fun way to kind of get to know everyone and then jumped right in um to to a totally new storyline and all this new developing stuff.
Yeah, amazing. It's, I think your scene with Gaten, particularly when you came in and did the whole never-ending story thing, was such a fan favorite, and I think yeah, he's my favorite character in the show as well. I think he's just so funny, and look that whole cast with the Stranger Things cast, I think is absolutely amazing. And yeah, I just they've been together since the very first season, and now we're on to the final season of Stranger Things, which is hard to believe. So, are you excited for the final season? And would you come back if they asked you to maybe come back for like a, I don't know, like a Susie spin off in the future? You excited to watch your final season? And as much as we all are.
Yeah, absolutely. I would. I know so many people who have done the smallest contributions in the show and still just getting, to interact with whoever they had worked with. It's almost as if no time had passed, because everyone, even though there are so many people that are now a part of the show, especially with the fifth season and so many different storylines having taken place, and not to mention how many people it took to even just create all of that. A massive amount of people, and yet I feel like every person who gets to return or gets to hear about potential other moments that could be happening in the future after this entire set of seasons is over. I've never met a person who wasn't excited at the thought of returning and getting to experience a bit of what they did initially yet again. And I think that it would be so fun to get to see whatever she is up to, especially after seeing just the smallest bit of her home life. I'm sure it would not be boring. There would never be a dull moment. And hopefully that would always also include, some of the most incredible parts of her character, which are also Dustin. Like, I I think that it's awesome that you said that he was one of your favorites, if not your favorite, because I think that almost every person I've ever met has said about the same. He's just such a lovable character, but more so, I think it's a lot of Gaten shining through, uh, into this character that they've created. That's also so much him placed in the context of the show. And I I feel like who would pass that up?
Yeah, it's amazing, and you got to be part of such a special show. And I know so many people just excited for that final season as well. And what I've loved before, as you touched on that before, is you also, before you went into the Stranger Things universe, you had a bit of a theatre background. So, how did you
Yeah.
get involved with doing a lot of theatre shows? I think was it Matilda that you were in as well when you were younger? How did you get involved in doing Broadway and theatre before leading into Stranger Things? How did that kind of theatre progression start for you?
Well, I had kind of fallen into it. I had moved from Staten Island, where I was born, um, to a different school where theater was really, really encouraged. And location wise, since I had a lot of family in Staten Island, I um had heard about Broadway and professional theater in New York, but I also had never thought of myself necessarily being a part of that. Um, and so I had auditioned just for one show. They were looking for a bunch of little kids for, and it happened to be Matilda. And once I actually had been cast as the role of Matilda, it was kind of like, okay, well, what do we do now? Um, and ever since that, I feel like that was a real learning experience for what, performance even was. But for me, it was also just really a hobby that really excited me as a kid, and I grew to love it so much more than just a hobby. But at the time, it also was something that Gayton was a part of. He was in Les Mis at the time that I was in Matilda. And Caleb, uh, who plays Lucas as well, and Sadie Sink's brother actually was in Matilda with me. So I actually met her originally as she was starting Annie while her brother and I were working together as kids in the same show. So after that, I really kind of never stopped because I loved it so much. But I would also say that a lot of my introduction to theater was my introduction to the people that I would end up working with in Stranger Things as well, especially the kids.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's amazing how you kind of started that, that theater. Not only kind of gave you that acting roots, but you kind of met a lot of the cast that you would, yet to go with, be within Stranger Things. So that's amazing to hear.
It's one of the most bizarre coincidences, and
No.
especially like it just felt like it was already such a small world, and then all of those exact people being put together in such a perfect group and dynamic in a show. First of all, it was so exciting to see just knowing them all as a kid and being like, oh my gosh, those are my friends. Um, but also just because I think the worlds got even smaller, and a lot of the best people that I knew, a lot of the best friends that I knew about growing up were all together and had all found each other and were working together.
Yeah, incredible. So you talk about Matilda as well. Now, best thing about Matilda is the composer. Now, I've always been a fan of the composer and Tim Minchin. So did you get to meet Tim Minchin at all while you were doing Matilda?
Yes, I did. I hadn't necessarily uh worked with Tim when the show had come over from the West End and started branching off to Australia and all the other places that they started running the show. When they brought it over to New York, I hadn't known him, especially because he was so involved in the West End's production still. Um, but when the show had started its US national tour, um, I had done a lot of promotional work for that, and a lot of that actually involved him coming and playing for these massive audiences of people all across the United States. And I happened to be one of the people who traveled with them to help sort of promote and introduce the idea of that show coming around everywhere to all the different states. So that was actually and that was after I had already left the show. So I actually only started to really get to know this person who I had performed their work like every night all the time. I only got to know him as a person after all of that. Um, and it was so exciting, especially I think afterwards, because I had grown to love all of his music and his writing so much more after having that be my entire like year as a child. And I think that it was like working with someone who is not just an idol, but like I felt like, oh my gosh, like this is exactly the person that I've been kind of helping to give a voice to uh whenever I was doing the show, and now I was getting to do it and also he's just such a cool guy.
Yeah.
He was so fun. I remember we would sit in dressing rooms before performing, and he, he was just the funniest, most casual uh person to be kind of just placed there, and yet it was not casual at all. It was so hilarious. Um a lot of playing soccer, football, like just in like the most cramped quarters. And like very bizarre, fun, random things like that, that I think partly for him, he knew me being a kid, I probably would also just be into. Um, really, I think that that is part of the entire charm of all of the writing of Matilda as well, is how well he's able to portray like the mind of children versus how that translates to every other age.
Yeah, look, he's incredible, and he's one of my absolute favorites. And yeah, I've loved watching his work for so long. And yeah, I remember when I went to see the show Matilda and just kind of fell in love with it when it was, touring Australia here as well. So yeah, it's great to hear. You've got so much fond memories of working with him in particular. And yeah, I've always just loved his kind of quirky sense of humor as well. So yeah, he's always been one of my absolute favorites. To mention. So
So
yeah,
so brilliant. Such
yeah.
just a brilliant choice for that show. I couldn't
Mm.
imagine it being written with any other team, especially taking him out of that. I think it would be an entirely different show.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, well, Gabriella, it's been amazing to hear about all your work on Stranger Things, particularly the excitement surrounding this final season. And yeah, I love Suzie when she first came onto the screen as well, and your interaction with Dustin and that never-ending story scene. So it's been great to hear not only about your time on Stranger Things, but also your time in the theater as well, and how that kind of shaped you and how you kind of built those connections, particularly the small world of going through the theater community and meeting the cast of Stranger Things that you would yet to then at that stage go on and work with them. So yeah, it's just been amazing to kind of just have a short little chat about the way you've been able to incorporate into this universe, into this show, and make such great connections, and yeah, continue your work in the acting industry.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I
No,
always love talking about this. It's my favorite thing.
no worries. Thanks, Gabriella.